Recognizing a quorum, I'm calling this meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order at 1:03 p.m. on September 20th, 2018. Can I ask, can everybody hear me in the back of the, let me put this on. Can everybody hear me in the back? Right. Commissioner Doyle, would you say something so that people can make sure they can hear you?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Can everybody hear Commissioner Doyle? Since Commissioner Doyle is dialing in remotely, all votes that we'll take today will be by voice roll call. Thank you. Can I ask, is anybody recording this? Since this meeting is being recorded, let me put the public on notice that the meeting is indeed being recorded. Thank you. Can I ask everybody to put their cell phones on mute or shut them off altogether? Thank you. Great. I'll walk through the agenda, and then I just have a few comments to make. Figure out how to do this. There we go. I have a few comments, as I mentioned. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve from previous meetings, which I believe will catch us up to our last meeting 2 weeks ago. The executive director will make his standard report in terms of where we are with respect to license applications received and in process to date. At the last meeting, we asked the executive director to come back with a timeline and a process flow for reviewing the final licensure process post granting of preliminary licenses, and so we have that report, which I think is going to be helpful to everybody in terms of expectations. And then we've also asked the executive director to give us a sense of the key dates in terms of milestones and other requirements of the commission for the remainder of this calendar year and actually into next calendar year as well. So we'll go through that. There are 3 sets of discussions and votes before we get into preliminary license discussions. First is we are legislatively required to submit a report to the legislature. We are legislatively required to submit a report to the legislature on our activities on an annual basis. Given that we are just coming up at the end of our first year, we have a deadline of September 28th to submit this report. I want to thank the executive director and the staff for putting the report together. It has been circulated to the commission. We need to discuss and approve that so that it can be submitted on time next Friday, the 28th. So that will be on the agenda. Thank you very much. It was also pointed out to me by Commissioner Doyle, thank you Commissioner Doyle, that the appointments that we made at one of our very first meetings for a commission secretary and a commission treasurer are annual appointments, and we therefore need to appoint for the next 12 months a treasurer and a secretary, so we will discuss and vote on that. We have 8 applications that the staff has made a recommendation on with respect to approval of provisional licenses, so we'll go through that, and I believe that that is the entirety of the agenda. So before we get into the agenda, there are just 2 notes I wanted to make in terms of milestones for the commission. I think that are very important, and whenever we talk about milestones, we always say, or at least I always say, it's great and we feel really proud of our accomplishments, but we recognize that we have many, many more things to do and many more milestones in the future. But these 2 I thought were worth noting. I think most people are aware of them, but just in case. One is we now have conducted our first final inspections for provisional licensees that requested. They told us that they were ready for those final inspections, so I'm not going to detail the results of those inspections since that's still pending, but I just wanted to let people know that those final inspections had started, and we're scheduling others for provisional licensees that have told us that they were ready to have those inspections. And wanted to just recognize our enforcement and investigation team, Yao, Kyle, and Patrick, and the rest of the staff for getting us ready to do these and for conducting these in a timely and efficient manner. Second, it's been reported, I think last Friday, that a credit union has made the decision to come in and provide banking services to the adult use industry. That's GFA Credit Union, Federal Credit Union in Gardner, Massachusetts. I just wanted to acknowledge that that is a very important step. I want to give credit to Tina Sabrega, the CEO of GFA, and her board of directors for making that decision. I am hopeful that that example will be followed by other banks, but it's an important step in the building of this industry, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that. That's it for my comments, so let's get into the agenda, starting with minutes. And we have, as I said, 3 sets of minutes, starting with September 12th, 2017. Can I ask the commission if they've had a chance to review those minutes and if there are any questions or comments? Commissioner Doyle, do you have any questions or comments?
Yep, I'm all set.
You're all set, okay. Then can I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes from September 12, 2017?
So moved. Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. We're going to do voice votes again. Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the vote was 5-0 in favor of approving the minutes. Thank you very much. Next set of minutes are from August 23rd, 2018. Can I ask the Commissioner, do you have any questions or comments on these minutes? Commissioner Doyle? Commissioner Doyle?
I'm all set.
Okay, great, thanks. Then can I have a motion to approve the minutes for August 23rd, 2018?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Doyle, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the Commissioner unanimously approved the minutes from August 23rd, 2018. The last set of minutes for approval are September 6, 2018, our last meeting. Can I ask the Commission, do you have any questions or comments? Commissioner Doyle?
No.
Then can I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes from September 6, 2018?
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made a motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Doyle, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the minutes from September 6, 2018. Thank you. So I think we are caught up unless we discover minutes from a year ago that somehow fell through the cracks, which I don't think is the case. So thanks to our legal staff for getting us caught up and keeping us caught up. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Executive Director, it's time for your report. I believe we have no new employees or new job postings to discuss. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
So then should we jump right into the licensing statistics?
Sounds good. So you'll see the typical layout and report for the licensing data, beginning first with the total volume of applications pending in the system. There are 2,698 applications that are somewhere in process. That includes 855 that are pending, with at least one packet having been submitted, 164 that have been withdrawn, 1,649 incomplete, and of course the Commission has issued to date 30 provisional licenses. And the breakdown is below. You see a large volume as far as marijuana establishment agents, which is the next, as I'll get into later, an important phase and step toward final licensure. So that, you see the breakdown is normal. The next slide indicates that there are 143 that have been submitted, with all 4 packets having been submitted. And the first step, of course, is to review those applications for completeness. Those 143 break down into 3 independent testing lab, 47 cultivation, 3 micro business, 39 product manufacturer, 3 research facility, 46 retail, and 2 transportation with an existing marijuana establishment license. The difference between this meeting and the last meeting is a total of 18 additional licenses or applications that are pending. The breakdown is 79 with R&D priority, 3 with economic empowerment priority, and 61 general applicants. Those 143 represent 73 different entities. It's important to note, of those 143, that includes those 30 that have provisional licenses as well.
Questions? Thank you.
The next slide indicates where those 143 are in process. So as indicated, there are 30 that have been issued provisional licenses. Otherwise, there are 26 awaiting review, that the first step being completeness. That includes those 18 new applications. There are 44 that we've reopened and requested additional information, therefore been deemed incomplete. 35 are out for third party. That includes the background check as well as municipal notice. And 8, of course, are before the Commission today for consideration.
Thank you.
This is the map breakdown that indicates which counties in Massachusetts we're seeing applications from. Important to note that we're seeing a variety of additions throughout Massachusetts. That includes 1 additional in Berkshire County, 1 additional in Hampshire County, 3 from Hampden County, 2 additional from Worcester County, 1 additional from Middlesex County, 4 from Essex, 3 from Suffolk, 1 from Plymouth, and 2 from Bristol. That's the 18 applications that have come in over the past 2 weeks, so spread across the Commonwealth.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you.
I have a question. I had asked a few meetings ago about including the numbers we're required to track related to disadvantaged business enterprises. I just wanted to make sure that's still being worked on.
It absolutely is. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So as you recall, I think it was Commissioner Title that requested that the Executive Director report on the process to final licensure, starting with once a provisional license has been issued, what are the next steps? So I appreciate the work done to do that, and appreciate your walking us through the process.
Sure, and as I, thank you, Mr. Chairman, as I walk through this, I'll also point out or attempt to point out what is really under the Commission's control and authority in context, and what we'll be relying on provisional licensees to react to. So the first step, of course, is to secure a provisional license. The next step for an entity, once they secure that provisional license, of course, is to pay the appropriate license fee. They're allowed to begin the agent registration process. And then lastly is if they feel as though they're ready for an inspection, to submit a form that indicates that they are in fact ready and certify that they have met the conditions and are in fact prepared for inspection. The next step on our part would be to conduct that inspection. As I indicated, there's a request for post-provisional license inspection form that indicates that the applicant has met the various conditions applied to the provisional license and that they are in fact in compliance with the Commission's regulations. Once we get that request into the Commission, someone on our staff, someone from the enforcement staff, will contact that applicant in order to arrange and schedule an inspection. We will contact the applicant within 5 business days. That does not mean that the inspection will occur within 5 business days. We will be in touch with the applicant so as to schedule it, but they will hear from someone from the Commission within those 5 business days. The reason it's 5 business days at this point is more for as we scale this operation and volume increases, that we're setting an expectation for applicants. The truth of the matter today is, of course, if a form came in, we would schedule it promptly as is possible, and perhaps even within that same day. But the 5 business days is to set an expectation of we as a Commission, once we get something, will be as responsive as possible to licensees. As an ongoing activity is the agent registration process, which the Commission will recall that is now a staff delegated task. And as we begin to get those applications, and as you saw today, there's over 800 that are pending today. That'll be a manual process on our end. We will evaluate each application and evaluate its criteria versus the regulations. That's an ongoing fluid process that may or may not, does not necessarily need to be satisfied in its entirety. So knowing that employees are going to be a fluid process. But ideally to get folks into the metric system, to get them badged, the earlier that they can submit those applications to us is really critical. But that's an ongoing fluid process that would be required prior to final licensure, at least having some individuals that are going to be working in that establishment on day 1. Those folks need to be registered with the Commission. We will then prepare, after the inspections and the provisional license and all the interaction with licensees has gone on, we will begin to prepare a final license recommendation for the Commission's consideration. To issue the final license is entirely a Commission decision, and we may, at that point, at that stage, as we do a provisional, recommend conditions being placed on that license. An example I would provide is that before opening and commencing their full operations, the entity have all of their inventory in metric and also be functioning within metric from a seed to sale standpoint. So that will be presented to the Commission. And then lastly is ensuring that if the conditions are in fact placed on the license, that they've been met, that inventory is in fact in metric, that if it's a cultivator, for instance, that the plants are tagged or the packaged products are tagged and uploaded into metric, that those agents that will be working there upon the opening have been properly registered and properly badged. Any questions at this stage? And I'll dive into each one specifically as well.
Any questions? Thank you.
So as I indicated, the provisional license is in fact issued by the Commission. It's based on our evaluation largely of the application that's been submitted, that includes the paperwork, a lot of the summaries, a lot of the operating procedures, and a lot of their intent once they do secure a license, and evaluating that against the Commission's regulations. We also, once provisionally licensed, we will send a notice to that licensee indicating that they've secured a provisional license that also identifies any conditions that must be satisfied in order to proceed to final license. We also give them information about the process for registering agents, and now give them a form that indicates a request for post-provisional license inspection, which needs to be filled out and returned to us. Once it's returned to us, as I indicated prior, we will be in touch with that applicant or that licensee within 5 business days in order to schedule the initial inspection. And then, of course, the payment of a license fee, and I think it's important to note, once that license fee is paid through the Mass Cannabis Industry Portal, there is an API that's been established to both the Department of Revenue as well as Metric. And that functions as intended, as we built it. So information is now pushed to Metric that indicates this is now a provisional licensee within the Cannabis Control Commission, and that entity is created within Metric. Once there's agents that are registered to that entity, that will also be, it's a nightly push, but it functions as we intended it, as we built it, and it's functioning properly today. We also share the information with the Department of Revenue so that they have a notice that this entity is provisionally licensed, and well, that's relevant is, of course, the collection of tax revenue. They have a notice that that's coming. The same will occur once a final license is in fact issued.
Great. Questions? Thanks. Inspection?
So the inspection phase is as you indicated, Mr. Chairman, the phase we're in today, which is we will conduct an inspection once we've received a request for post-provisional license inspection. Our staff will contact that applicant within 5 business days to schedule it. This team, as you indicated as well, is led by the Director of Investigations. From just a pure process standpoint, we have, as you know, we have 4 investigators that are employed by the Commission today, 2 of them per inspection. So will be 1 lead inspector or investigator per inspection, and then someone else that is there to divvy up the work, but also to serve as witness during the course of that inspection. What they're conducting the inspection against is a robust checklist that includes the Commission's regulations so as to evaluate compliance. And if there's anything that is deemed to be non-compliant or viewed to be non-compliant, that'll be generated or indicated in a report. If there's any findings that need to be remediated or some way cured, that'll be left with the licensee after the inspection is done, also filed with the licensing system. So in other words, the first inspection is not necessarily the final inspection. It is, however, an important step toward getting there, but if there is a finding, that'll be left with the licensee. They will then communicate with us that we've cured this, whatever it might be, this finding, and we will go out and conduct an inspection again.
With the same timeline in terms of responsiveness?
We will be as, I think the spirit and the theme of today, if I can press upon it anymore, is that if we control it, we will do it. So we will do it promptly, we will do it efficiently, but we'll also do it thoroughly. So that checklist is really, again, a complete list of the Commission's regulations and requirements, and we're inspecting against that. Again, the length of inspections has been a question that I've gotten quite a bit. It's really going to vary depending upon the size of the overall facility, but also the volume of licenses contained within that facility. So if it's one location that is, for an example, if it's a vertically integrated R&D that has all 3 in the same location, from the Commission standpoint, that is the equivalent of inspecting 3 licenses. In that we will break it up as such to inspect the compliance with the manufacturer processing license, as well as with retail, as well as with cultivation, and use that as the opportunity to conduct 3 inspections from an efficiency standpoint, but again, thoroughly making sure we're checking each license. If we do find any deficiencies or any findings, that'll be formally provided to the licensee. They'll therefore be on notice of what is required for them to proceed. And of course, we will conduct as many follow-up inspections as are necessary in order to ascertain compliance.
Questions on this? Next.
As indicated, the agent registration process is something that's going to be underlying throughout not just the provisional to final phase, but even after final, knowing that this is essentially your employee base and folks come and go. So this is going to be ongoing, but it's an important element. I think what's important in the context of agent registrations was that decision at the last meeting to delegate this to staff. We will do this as promptly and as thoroughly as we can as well. But of course, now that it's a staff level function, we can do it essentially around the clock if necessary. So we will do that. Of course, as I also indicated at the last meeting, we will report back to the Commission as often as possible, indicating the fruits of that effort, and therefore you can certainly maintain your oversight of that. So, but this delegation was important. We will report regularly. once an entity secures a provisional license is really when we would trigger an agent registration process and evaluate those applications on a rolling basis. There was an improvement to the system yesterday, so folks that did apply will notice that that application may in fact been reopened. That is so we can make sure we secure all the information. That also includes a photo upload of the individual, thus allowing us to get to the important element of badging. So once an agent is approved in the system, that'll generate a notice to them, actually to the entity, indicating that the agent is in fact approved as an agent. That'll then generate a badge to be printed and mailed to them. This will serve as kind of a temporary badge, so to speak, but the badge will be printed and mailed in a prompt way. And again, this is really an ongoing process that is not necessarily isolated to provisional to final, but is an important step to get to that opening phase. Any questions at that point?
Questions?
Yes, first I just appreciate that you put all the effort in to find those workarounds to make sure that this moves as efficiently as possible. Do you have an estimate for about how long it takes the staff to review agent registration?
Not at this point. It shouldn't take us long necessarily. It's one packet, but I wouldn't want to say it will take us an hour or two, given that the volume of it as well. But also, there's a likelihood that an individual would be tied to a specific license type. So if I work in, say, again, a vertically integrated RMD, and I work in all those different operations, I would need to be tied to that individual license. And we're going to be evaluating compliance against those license types. So for instance, someone may be permitted to work in a cultivation but not in a retail, and that would get an individual evaluation on each instance. So, but it shouldn't take us long necessarily, but I hate to say that it'll take us an hour and see it take us two.
I appreciate your commitment to work as hard as necessary to make sure that we're promptly reviewing and
Yes.
improving.
And that is an underlying commitment across the board, as I indicated. If it's something that the Commission controls exclusively, we will apply and devote whatever resources are necessary to do this efficiently, but without sacrificing thoroughness.
Any other questions? Not from the Commission.
And lastly is the final license recommendation. As I indicated, this is a Commission consideration. We will develop a recommendation after our review of an application. As I should mention, our application evaluation is ongoing. So if something is presented to us between provisional and final, we will evaluate that as an ongoing review of that application. We'll also present any materials that are necessary, and then finally is the results of that inspection, I guess ascertaining or evaluating compliance. The presentation will include that inspectional report, as well as, if necessary, any photos that we may take, and any materials that we've gathered during the inspectional process. And lastly, of course, we may recommend certain conditions to be met at the final stage that we will then evaluate before the facility may in fact.
As examples?
I mentioned previously the conditions of product being input into metric, all inventory being tagged properly, and ensuring that there's a valid API or upload to metric that we can ascertain and then inspect against using the RFID technology.
Commissioner McBride?
I just had a question about the process on final recommendation. Are we going to have an opportunity to have a panel in front of us of folks from our staff to ask questions of, seeing as, you know, we can sort of review what's on paper, but are we going to be able to ask questions of staff as well?
It would, through the chair, it would be my hope and my expectation that at the final license stage would be first a presentation from staff on the inspectional process, the evaluation of the license application, but also to make available to the Commission the folks that actually conducted that inspection. And you can therefore hear from them, but also if there's any specific questions that I may not have the specific answer to, that I may not have been exposed to, they'd be available to you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner McBride. So we will make that happen. Any other questions on the final license before we get to the last step, which is approval for opening? Or establishment opening?
So as I indicated, the metric is obviously an important compliance tool for us, and we want to make sure that folks are in it and that it's functioning for each individual licensee, but also that we're able to see that information from a batch upload standpoint. So that may, again, maybe one of the conditions that we would recommend. If there's any other conditions that would need to be placed, we'll certainly ascertain compliance with that. And then what we would intend to do from a staff level is essentially issue a notice that is, you may in fact commence your full operation. So a good example, or hopefully would be illustrative there, is, say for instance, a retail establishment secures a final license, can therefore begin to collect and gather inventory, but they would not be able to sell to the general public just yet. We would conduct that in kind of final review, make sure that that inventory is in fact in metric, that they're functional, and then issue that final commence full operations. It's hard to give necessarily a timeline. That's really going to be largely up to the licensee, but assuming they're able to do that efficiently, we would certainly get out there again promptly to ensure that they're ready to go and make that commence full operations notice available to them.
So once again, thank you for your responsiveness in putting this together and for the thoughtfulness in putting it together. This seems to be a very complete and thorough process. Let me ask, are there questions either on this last slide about establishment opening or on the process as a whole? From anybody on the commission?
A comment?
Please, go ahead.
I want to thank you for the thoroughness of that presentation. It was exactly what I was envisioning. And I also want to say I have full faith and confidence in the licensing and investigation team, and I can see how efficiently they're working and that this is moving as fast as possible. I also just want to acknowledge that we hear the public, I hear from the public a lot that their primary concern is the dates and when the date of the store's opening will be. And it's not that we have that date and are refusing to give it. As you can see from this presentation, there are many steps where they're out of our control and we can't predict it. But what we can do is make a commitment for the steps that are under our control for how long they will take. And we can also commit at each opportunity that we have to share where we are in the process. But I definitely want to say that out loud because in the past I might have been impatient about questions about when those stores are opening. And I absolutely acknowledge and understand that the voters are our most important constituency that put this forward, that they've been waiting 2 years, that we have put dates out there, and so they now see a perceived delay. And so I'm making it a priority. I think we should all make it a priority to continually check in with the timeline, where we are in the timeline, and then as soon as we are able to give a date.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Doyle? I can't see you raising your hand.
Oh, sorry, I had you on mute. I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Then again, our thanks for doing this, and our thanks for the commitment to do it thoroughly and promptly. Is there anything else in your report? I guess, yes, the schedule of key days going forward.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. So on the left-hand column, you'll see the upcoming meetings for the commission, and I think the attempt here is to give a bit of a flavor for what may be on the docket. That includes at the next meeting, the next scheduled meeting of October 4th, as the commission will recall, during the final regulatory discussion, there was a decision to postpone consideration of the social consumption delivery issues that were contained within the draft regulations to October for discussion as a policy, with an intention to return in February for any draft regulations that would be the results from that. So that would be, the 2 meetings in October would be the 4th and the 18th. On November 1st would be a regularly scheduled meeting for consideration of the medical marijuana regulations. That'll follow the public comment period, which as a plug is open now and available now, and certainly would encourage folks to submit those comments to us.
Through the 29th of October?
29th of October, which is the the public hearing date in both Boston and Springfield.
And I think I asked the last meeting, do we have locations and times set for those meetings yet?
We do. So the 29th, I believe the morning is Springfield.
Well, you don't need, we can post it on our website though? It's not posted?
It will also be advertised in newspapers as
Great.
required.
Okay, thank you.
And I assume we'll also share it amongst our social media as well. The November 15th, 29th, and December 13th are regularly scheduled meetings. Within that window could certainly be a follow-up if necessary on social consumption delivery from a policy standpoint. My expectation for the 4th and 18th of October would be a staff presentation of kind of gathering information for the commission's consideration. But of course, if there's any follow-up that's necessary based on that, we do have that window to return.
Yeah, I think it's important just to remind people that when we did agree to defer, we agreed specifically to revisit this in October. We raised the issues that we were concerned about at the time we had the conversation and asked the staff to do some investigatory work, including looking at the experiences of other states. And so it's important just to acknowledge that staff work has been going on for that period of time, and that will report back to us as part of the input for the conversation we'll have on the 4th and the 18th. So thank you for that.
Sure. And so the schedule of meetings indicates that some direction or decision on the two issues of social consumption and delivery would be anticipated by the January 10th meeting, which would then give us an ability to staff, if necessary, to start developing draft regulations that would give us that opportunity to come back in February to consider those. The middle column you see there is more key dates and deadlines and events. The first is more of a plug that the Boston Chamber is putting together a program relative to the fierce frequency of now in the Shakia, the Director of Community Outreach, is planning an event relative to the intersection of cannabis and equity, which is on September 25th. There's information on our website as far as registering for that event. Registration has been very robust, which is obviously a good thing for us to see, and so we'll want to put a plug in for that. As you mentioned, October 29th is when the public comment period closes on the draft co-location and medical marijuana regs, and the public hearings are scheduled again, Springfield and Boston on that day as well. January 1st is the deadline for the report. The special commission on operating under the influence and driving impaired is that statutory deadline. That is a commission that I chair with 12 other members, and we're meeting regularly. And lastly, as previously mentioned, February would be the anticipated timeline for consideration of any regulations relative to social consumption and delivery. On the right-hand column, the rightmost column, is just other meetings that are happening around the commission, but certainly relevant to the commission's work. The Cannabis Advisory Board, the full board, has a meeting scheduled for November 8th. The Special Commission on Operating Under the Influence and Impaired Driving has 2 meetings scheduled of October 12th and November 9th. Commissioner Doyle, as the chair of the Energy and Environment Working Group, has been meeting feverishly and has a meeting scheduled for October 12th. And lastly, the Citizen Review Committee, as developed in the Commission's regulations, is scheduled to meet on November 29th.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes. So just to underscore, the social consumption discussion and delivery discussion, it may look misleading up there that those are the only discussions, but that's actually the beginning, right? And it will be focused on the concerns that were previously raised at our public meetings, and our staff will be making a report on those issues at that time. And I would encourage the staff that's putting that together, if they have recommendations based on their research or looking at other states or based on their work with licensees, I would love to hear those recommendations along with the report. Is there a public comment period associated with those topics?
There's not one that was anticipated. I think my expectation or my hope would be to also, just as a refresher for the commission, is pull any public comments we did receive during that draft regulation phase. That's certainly something we could consider there as well.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner
I
Flanagan?
just have one comment. I mean, I think that, it's important that we have comment periods, but people are also free to send us emails and comments throughout the year for this. It's not like we have to have designated comment periods, so.
I think it's fair to say that people do.
Well, I mean, I think they do, but I think sometimes we stress comment periods. So I just want to reinforce the fact
That's
that,
good
we
point.
are a public agency and that people have the ability, and that we're willing to take the comments all the time.
Very good point, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just wanted to say I agree. I don't think there's any need to set up a formal one.
I mean, if we do go through, if we decide that regulations for one or both are in order, then we'll do the normal formal comment and formal hearings around the regulations themselves. Anything else in your report, Mr. Executive Director?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was thorough and very interesting. Appreciate it. Appreciate the hard work that went behind that. Before we get into the recommendation of provisional licenses, there are 3 orders of business for the commission to discuss. The first is a draft that was prepared by the executive director and staff on the annual report due to the legislature on or before September 28th. That has been circulated amongst the commission. I would encourage the commission to raise any questions or concerns they have from a substantive standpoint. To the extent that there are any edit or ministerial changes, I prefer that we do that offline with recommendations to the executive director. So I'd like to open the conversation for any comments, as I said, that are of substantive nature on the report as drafted. Commissioner Flanagan?
I just have one comment. I just want to thank the staff. I think that once people read this report to the legislature, they'll see the diligence by which we've been working, over the past year, and the fact that the staff has been so involved in such a short period of time. I think this highlights a lot of what people have seen in our meetings and what we've tried to accomplish going thus far. And I really appreciate the work that everyone has put into this, and not only the report, but the daily work that happens at the commission.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. Other questions or comments on the report? Commissioner Doyle?
Thank you. I had on my comments earlier, and I think they're reflected in the draft that the commission is reviewing.
Right, the one that was circulated earlier today? That's correct. Okay, thank you. Commissioner McBride?
I just had one additional comment, and it's an edit that I will suggest to the executive director and staff, just about the number of presentations that the commissioners have made to stakeholder groups since we began a year ago. I know that it is many presentations that all of us have done, and I would like to see a reflection of that, because for the initial period of time before we had staff, when it was just the 5 commissioners and the executive director, that was sort of the primary way that we were out talking about the regulations and talking about our mandate and what we were doing. And then that has, with the addition of staff, that has become, I think, even more robust as we've included staff in a lot of those presentations. And I think it's a really important piece of what we have done, and I think what we're going to continue to do, being out in the public and talking about what we're doing and bringing that to the various stakeholders. So I'll suggest that edit to you, and hopefully you can include it.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or suggestions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please.
I think just for context for folks, that this will be an annual report and an annual exercise that I would intend to bring before the commission. It is required statutorily to be issued to the appointing authorities of the commission, so the governor, attorney general, and treasurer, as well as the legislature, specifically the Ways and Means Committees and the Marijuana Policy Committee, on an annual basis, 90 days after the close of a fiscal year. So that's where that end of September deadline came from. But I also want to Commissioner Flanagan's point, and not to belabor the point, but I think the intent here was to have an organic effort from staff, from department heads, to really lay out the work that they've done and conducted, and then obviously give the commission a chance to really fuse that together in a comprehensive way. So this would be an annual exercise that we hopefully build off of in future years.
So I think we've all been reflective over the last couple of weeks as we've kind of noted, not celebrated, but certainly have noticed that it's our first anniversary, and it's a pretty amazing set of things that have been accomplished during that period of time. It's great to see it documented in this way. It really does kind of support the point that we've come a long ways in here. We all recognize that we have a lot more work to do, so nobody is declaring victory, but it's an impressive document, and I appreciate the effort of you and the staff pulling it together. Are there any other comments? As I said, we'll leave editorial and ministerial suggested changes to be given to the executive director after the meeting. But if there are no other comments, then I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the executive director to submit this report subject to the editorial change or the radical and ministerial changes that might come, but to submit this report on or before the 28th of September.
So moved.
Can I move the motion? Thank you very much, Commissioner Flanagan. Can I have a second?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Your vote, Commissioner Doyle?
Aye, but I just want to make sure that Commissioner McBride's proposed edit is recognized in the motion.
Fine.
It is.
So noted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Doyle. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that unanimously the Commission approved the Executive Director submitting his report to the Legislature, subject to both ministerial edits as well as Commissioner McBride's proposed edit. Thank you very much again for your hard work here. The next two agenda items I'm going to do at the same time. As I said, based upon the law, we are required to appoint for an annual term a treasurer of the Commission and a secretary of the Commission. And I first of all wanted to acknowledge and thank Commissioner Doyle for her role as secretary of the Commission and Commissioner Flanagan for her role over the last 12 months as treasurer. They are unpaid positions and they are above and beyond their day jobs, and so I really appreciate the energy and the effort and the impact that the two of them have had by playing those roles, but I think it is appropriate that those roles rotate and that we don't ask anybody to do that for more than a year consecutively. With that in mind, I would like to ask for a motion to nominate Commissioner McBride as the treasurer of the Commission for the next 12 months.
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Then the motion is to nominate Commissioner McBride as the treasurer of the Commission. Can I have a voice vote starting with Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride, do you have to abstain? Does she have to abstain or does she vote for herself?
She can vote.
I think she could vote for herself, yeah.
I thought it'd be really interesting if she voted against herself, but
There's no conflict of interest there. so-
Commissioner McBride,
Aye.
Commissioner Title,
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approves the appointment of Commissioner McBride as treasurer of the Commission for the next 12 months. Thank you. I would also like to ask for a motion to appoint Commissioner Title as the secretary of the Commission for the next 12 months. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Let's do a voice vote starting with Commissioner Doyle.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Tyler, we've proven that you do not have to recuse yourself.
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that unanimously the Commission approved the appointment of Commissioner Tyler as Secretary of the Commission. So again, thank you to Commissioners Doyle and Flanagan for their previous service, and thank you in advance to Commissioners McBride and Tyler for their future service. That is it for Commission business, other than listening and discussing and voting on staff recommendations with respect to 8 provisional licenses. Mr. Executive Director. First license for consideration is BCWC LLC, number MCN 281263, which is Tier 2 indoor cultivation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will move through these as expeditiously as possible, but certainly giving them, again, the attention they deserve. As you indicated, this is BCWC LLC. I didn't make up the name. It doesn't roll off the tongue, but the address proposed is 34 Extension Street in Attleboro. As you indicated, the license type is cultivation for Tier 2, which authorizes up to 10,000 square feet. The applicant also has a product manufacturing application, which is pending next for consideration. The individuals are listed on the executive summary. There is one entity that is involved in the establishment, which is Future Farm Technologies. They're a Canadian corporation that lends financial support to applicants, including this applicant, and they'll hold an equity stake in the establishment. This applicant is an RMD priority applicant, as they are currently in compliance with DPH as an RMD. This would be, they have an RMD for Provisional Certificate of Registration for Dispensing, Cultivation, and Processing. They have a host community agreement that was executed on April 30th, and certification was provided. They also held their community outreach meeting on April 30th with notice published in the Sun Chronicle. On this application, we sent a notice to the municipality on July 6th. The response we received from the municipality was that they were currently going through their local ordinances and enacting them, so they could not certify at that time. I can say that the ordinances have been, in fact, adopted locally as of September 5th. So we did not receive certification. The 60 days didn't expire. However, there are now local ordinances in place. And we will inspect during the final license process their compliance against that with the municipality. Their plan, the summary of their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is that they plan to focus efforts in Mansfield and Taunton as their proximity to Attleboro is relevant. The applicant has a 2-pronged approach for positive impact. First is a financial support. They plan to make no less than $10,000 in financial contributions to the Boys and Girls Clubs of Taunton, and the Mansfield YMCA Arts and Education Center. And for industry-specific instruction, they plan to provide no less than 50 hours per year towards educating individuals from disproportionately impacted locations in specific areas of the industry. There were no concerns raised during the background check. There are also no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions or any occupational license issues. There are several individuals associated with the application that have business interests in other jurisdictions. That includes Brett Fish, Blair Fish, and John Kenyon with an interest in Ocean State Cultivation Center, which is a medical marijuana business in Rhode Island. Brett Fish also has an interest in Ohio Craft Cultivators in New Hampshire, and Derek Ross has an interest in Future Farms Maine LLC and Harrisk Associates LLC. Future Farms Maine, of course, is in Maine, and Harrisk is in Rhode Island. These disclosures do not present any suitability issues. They secure their civic good standing with DOR as well as the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Their plan to be operational is that they reported they have engaged with architects to renovate and expand their current facility. They expect that construction will conclude in early December 2018. Their plan to be operational Monday through Sunday, 24 hours a day. This means the required summaries, evaluated those summaries, and deemed them or determined them to be substantially compliant with our regulations. Their diversity plan includes forming a diversity and equality committee to accomplish the goal of being diverse and to promote equitable hiring practices, establishing a mentorship program, creating incentives for current employees to recruit individuals from diverse backgrounds, and analyzing their employee population to ensure its diversity. They provided a detailed cultivation plan that summarizes their process, the supplies, and the techniques that will be utilized throughout the propagation, cloning, vegetative, flowering, harvesting, and curing phases. Therefore, the recommendation is to approve provisional license with the following conditions: that final license is subject to the certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations, that final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with our regulations, that the final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that the facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations, that the applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to the Commission staff, and lastly, that the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee. This is based on the applicant's compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. As of this date, the applicant has demonstrated that compliance, and accordingly, the applicant is recommended for a provisional license with those conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the Executive Director? Then can I have a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to approve a provisional license for the CWC LLC, number MCN 281263.
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Your vote, Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the granting of provisional license to MCM 281263. Thank you very much. Next is also BCWC LLC, number MPN 281325 for product manufacturer. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, the applicant is BCWC LLC. The address again is 34 Extension Street in Attleboro. This is their product manufacturing application. The Commission just approved a provisional license for their cultivation application. The same individuals are associated with the application, and the same entity is also associated with the application. This too is an RMD priority applicant, and they are in compliance with DPH. The host community agreement was executed on April 30th. The outreach meeting was held on April 30th as well. And the same issue as far as the local certification, given that we sent the notice in July, we did not receive within 60 days a response. However, the City of Attleboro has in fact enacted their local ordinances. The same summary of positively impacting areas of disproportionate impact applies to this application. There were no concerns raised during the background check on individuals or entities. There were disclosures of the same business interests in other jurisdictions. The applicant's proposed timeline is the same in that they have engaged with architects to renovate and expand their facility with the expectation of construction concluding in early December. The hours of operation are the same, Monday through Sunday, 24 hours a day. The same summaries were reviewed and evaluated with substantial compliance being determined. The diversity plan is the same as well. Their products to be produced or sold are oils, including cooking oils, baked goods such as brownies, cookies, and chocolates, tinctures, lozenges, beverages, transdermal applications such as patches, balms, and salves, vaporization cartridges, shatter, rosin, honey, hash, wax, sauce, capsules, tea bags, gummies, and infused sugar. The recommendation is that the applicant be issued a provisional license with the following conditions: that the final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with EPH regulations, that the final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with our regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that their facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations, that the applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to the commission staff, that the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the responses to the required criteria. As of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, and therefore the applicant is recommended for provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Other questions for Executive Director? I can have a motion, please, to approve the staff's recommendation to grant a provisional license to BCWC LLC MPN 281325.
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Your vote, Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the staff's recommendation to grant provisional license MPN 281325. Thank you. Next license is Late Spring Incorporated, doing business as Gage Cannabis Company, number MRN 281248, retailer. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, this applicant is Late Spring Incorporated, DBA Gage Cannabis Company. Proposed address is 38 Littleton Road in Ayer. The license being sought is that of a retailer. This applicant is not tied to an existing RMD. However, one of the owners is in fact affiliated with another entity, that is Central Ave Compassionate Care, which has applied for several licenses to the Commission. This does not represent an ownership issue, however. The individuals tied to the business are that the individual is John Hillier as an owner and director. It does not have any other interest or entities that were disclosed. This applicant is a general applicant and not an R&D or economic empowerment priority applicant. The host community agreement was executed on March 27th, and a community outreach meeting was held on August 2nd, with notification being published in the Sun. There were no objections raised to the Commission. We received a response from the municipality on August 22nd. The applicant is in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact includes holding informational sessions, skill assessments, job fairs, and resume cover letter workshops at least 3 times per year in Fitchburg, Lowell, and Worcester to help individuals in these areas build the necessary skills to become more attractive employment candidates, giving a hiring preference to individuals from areas of disproportionate impact, and supporting local charities and community organizations. After 1 year of operating in the adult use market, the applicant will review the following in order to measure the success of their plan: attendance at those informal sessions and workshops, outcomes of interviews generated from job fairs, overall staff that are past or present residents of disproportionate impacted areas, and overall financial support provided to local charities and organizations. There were no concerns raised during the background check of individuals or entities affiliated with the application, and no disclosures of any business interests in other jurisdictions. Their plan to become operational is that they will require the approval of architectural plans and minor renovations to an existing structure, including the installation of security systems, fixtures, and equipment. They indicated that a short renovation period, approximately 2 months, would be required to become operational once approved for a provisional license. Their hours of operation proposed are Monday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. They submitted the required summaries. We've evaluated those summaries and determined them to be substantially compliant with our regulations. Their diversity plan includes doing the following: conducting deliberate advertising and other forms of outreach to ensure diverse individuals are aware of employment openings, developing and implementing a screening system to mitigate bias of any employees in the interview process, providing trainings and professional development opportunities to staff at all levels, And lastly, conducting annual reviews of applicant pools, staff demographics, and changes in employment status, promotions or raises, to ensure that its goals of a diverse and unbiased workforce are achieved. This is a proposed retail application, so the applicant plans to establish and maintain business relationships with other adult use establishments to acquire their supply. And Mr. Hilliard's indicated that he's also the owner of an RMD that is applying for adult use cultivation and product manufacturing licenses. The staff recommends issuing the provisional license with the following conditions: that the final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations, that the final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with our regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that their facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. They shall cooperate with and provide information to the Commission staff. And the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee pursuant to our regulations. This is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, its suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses. We certify that we've done the due diligence review, and as of this date, they are in compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth. Accordingly, we recommend approval of the provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Then could I have a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to approve a provisional license for Late Spring Incorporated doing business as Gage Cannabis Company, MRN 281248.
So moved.
Have a second, please.
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Doyle, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved staff recommendation for Late Spring Incorporated DBA Gage Cannabis Company, MRN 281248. Thank you. Next two licenses, and I hope I don't mispronounce this, are for Temescal Wellness of Massachusetts, starting with MRN 281588, retailer.
I have a conflict with this, and our legal counsel suggested that the most cautious thing to do would be to step out.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Don't
Commissioner
steal my
Title.
computer.
Don't what?
Don't steal my computer. Don't worry, I'll watch it.
I think there are enough witnesses here. I'm unlikely to do something like that. And we'll get you as soon as we're done with these two. Thank you very much. Mr. Executive Director?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the entity, as you indicated, is Temescal Wellness of Massachusetts. The proposed address for the establishment is 10 Callahan Drive in Pittsfield. The application and license being sought is that of a retailer. This applicant also has submitted cultivation, product manufacturing, and another retail application pending with the Commission. The individuals indicated on the application of Robert Johnson and Edward Rebels. I apologize if I mispronounced it. Both are indicated as board members. Temescal Wellness of Massachusetts LLC has indirect authority over the applicant. Was formed for the purpose of providing initial capital and operations management services for the RMD business. The applicant represents the Edward Rebels. Again, I apologize if there's a mispronunciation. Exercises 100% of control of that entity. This applicant is an RMD priority applicant, and they are in compliance with the Department of Public Health. They have a provisional certificate for dispensing, cultivation, and processing in Pittsfield, as well as an FCR for dispensing in Hudson and cultivation processing in Worcester. The host community agreement was executed on May 25th. We received certification to that effect, and the community outreach meeting was held on April 13th with notice published in the Berkshire Eagle. There were no objections raised or communicated to the Commission. We received a response from the municipality on August 23rd. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact includes assisting individuals in sealing cannabis-related criminal records by continuing to provide guidance and resources, providing economic opportunity for those who have been harmed by cannabis prohibition, and providing safe consumer access to the legal adult-use cannabis market, and reducing the historic stigma and associated prejudices of marijuana in the locations in which it operates. There were no concerns raised during the background check on individuals or entities associated with the application, and no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions or occupational license issues. There are individuals that disclose business interests in other jurisdictions. That includes Temescal Wellness in New Hampshire, as well as Temescal Wellness in Maryland. From Edward Rebels, these do not present any suitability issues. The applicant did secure a certificate of good standing from the Department of Revenue as well as the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Their proposed timeline to be operational, is that the applicant states that medical marijuana sales will commence in September, and this location can be operationally in the adult use market in the fourth quarter of 2018. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. They submitted the required summaries. We've evaluated those summaries and determined them to be substantially compliant with our regulations. The summary of diversity plan includes continuing to work with a staffing agency to hire minority individuals from communities such as Pittsfield that have been harmed by cannabis prohibition. Continuing to utilize the Mass Supplier Diversity Office in order to identify certified women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses for vending and contracting services. Continuing to hold equal opportunity career fairs and measuring the diversity of the organization against the demographics of the marijuana establishment's host community. This is a retail application, so the applicant has vertically integrated R&D that is applying for adult use cultivation and product manufacturing licenses, in addition to providing its own supply of marijuana. It plans to procure additional supply from existing R&D wholesale partners if those partners are also granted adult use licenses. The Commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions. The final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with the pH regulations. The final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with our regulations. The final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that their facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. They shall cooperate with and provide information to the Commission staff. That the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, its suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses. As of this date, the applicant has demonstrated their compliance, and we therefore recommend provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Further questions? Then let me ask for a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to approve Temescal Wellness of Massachusetts, Inc., MRN 281588 for a provisional license as a retailer. Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Have a second, please.
Second.
I'm sorry, there's nobody else. Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Doyle, your vote, please.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission approved the granting of provisional license to Temescal Wellness, Massachusetts, MRN 281588 by a vote of 4 to 1, 4 in favor. Commissioner McBride, Commissioner Doyle, Commissioner Flanagan, Chairman Hoffman, with Commissioner Title abstaining. Or what's the correct terminology, Christine?
I'm sorry, say it again.
How do I characterize Commissioner Title's vote or non-vote? That she didn't vote?
That
or
she abstained.
She abstained, okay, so again, I think I got it right there. Thank you very much. Next, again, Temescal Wellness, Massachusetts, MRN 281309, retailer. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, this is Temescal Wellness of Massachusetts. The proposed address is 252 Coolidge Street in Hudson. This license being sought is that of a retailer. The applicant has also submitted a cultivation and product manufacturing license or application and just secured a retail provisional license. The individuals identified are the same as previously mentioned. The entities identified are the same as previously mentioned, and this is an RMD priority applicant. The host community agreement was executed on June 8th. The community outreach meeting was held on March 30th, and there were no objections raised to the commission. We did receive a response from the municipality on September 13th. The applicant, the proposed plan of positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is the same as previously mentioned. There are no concerns raised during the background check on individuals or entities, and no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions or any occupational license issues. Proposed business interests in other jurisdictions are the same as previously mentioned, that do not pose or raise any suitability issues. The applicant, for their timeline to become operational, this applicant currently operates an RMD dispensary at this location, and they state that they've taken all necessary steps to be operational in the adult use industry upon the issuance of a final license. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. They submitted all the required summaries, and those summaries have been determined to be substantially compliant. The diversity plan is the same as mentioned previously as well. Again, this is a retail application, so Their plan to obtain marijuana or marijuana products includes their vertically integrated R&D. They're applying for adult use cultivation, product manufacturing, and additionally providing their own supply. They plan to procure additional supply from existing R&D wholesale partners if those partners are also granted adult use licenses. The commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions: that the final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with EPH regulations. The final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with the requirements of our regulations. The final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that its facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with commission staff, and the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, its suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of their application. As of this date, they have demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, and we therefore recommend approval of the provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Then can I have a motion to approve staff recommendation for Temescal Wellness of Massachusetts, MRN 281309?
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Doyle, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation for Temescal Wellness of Massachusetts, MRN 281309, with 4 in favor: Commissioner McBride, Commissioner Flanagan, Commissioner Doyle, Commissioner Hoffman, with Commissioner Title abstaining. Thank you. Erica, could you get, thank you. Did she leave or is she coming back? All right. Your computer is still here.
Appropriate, and she recused herself, so she formally abstained.
What's that? There's 3 more to go. Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, next, Alternative Therapies Group Incorporated, MRN 281344, retailer. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The entity applying here is Alternative Therapies Group. The proposed address is 107 Elm Street in Salisbury. The license being sought is that of a retailer. This applicant has also secured a provisional license for 2 retail locations, a cultivation facility, as well as a product manufacturing provisional license. The individuals listed are the same as previously indicated for ATG, which is Christopher Edwards, Julio Fuentes, George Christie, and Derek Brock. There are no other entities other than the applicant that appear to have a direct or indirect control over the establishment. This applicant is an R&D priority applicant. The host community agreement was executed on August 13th. A community outreach meeting was held on July 25th. And there were no objections communicated to the commission. We received a response from the municipality on September 6th. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact includes conducting career fairs in Haverhill and Lynn, scheduling and conducting formal interviews with individuals from Haverhill and Lynn, offering job skill assessments, and providing guidance for interested parties to receive training relevant to the establishment's positions, continuing to make charitable donations to local nonprofit organizations, and conducting food drives to benefit local food pantries. There were no concerns raised during the background check on individuals or entities, and no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions or occupational license issues, and no disclosures of any business interests in other jurisdictions. Their plan to become operational is that there is construction going on at this location, which has commenced and should be completed by the 2nd week of October. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 6:45 p.m. The applicant submitted the required summaries, and those summaries have been determined to be substantially compliant. Their summary of the diversity plan includes a diverse workforce. The applicant plans to build upon an already diverse staff of executives and managers. The applicant will provide an inclusive and flexible environment for employees by identifying and removing any remaining systemic barriers to equitable access, participation, and progression in employment, so that all employees have the opportunity to fully contribute to life at the company. The applicant aims to create a working environment that allows employees to safely seek support to address issues arising from domestic or family violence. The applicant recognizes that employees may face situations of domestic and family violence that may have an impact on their attendance and productivity at work. And lastly, that the applicant plans to perform staff surveys, analyze results, identify areas for improvement, and take corrective steps. Their plan to obtain marijuana products includes that they are vertically integrated R&D and possess adult use provisional licenses for cultivation and product manufacturing. They plan to supply their own products for retail purposes. Commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions: that the final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations. The final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with our regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that their facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. That the applicant will cooperate with and provide information to commission staff. And the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, with suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses. As of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance, and we therefore recommend a provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Then can I have a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation on Alternative Therapy Group Incorporated, MRN 281344 retailer?
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Tidal. Your vote, Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Tidal?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the recommendation of staff on Alternative Therapies Group Incorporated, MRN 281344. Thank you. The next two and the last two are both from Central Avenue Compassionate Care Incorporated. First, MCN 281505, Tier 1 Indoor Cultivation. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, the applicant is Central Ave Compassionate Care. The proposed address is 31 Central Avenue in Air. The license being sought is that of a cultivator for Tier 1, which authorizes up to 5,000 square feet of cultivation. The applicant has also applied for a product manufacturing license. And as I indicated previously, Mr. John Hillier is the owner of this entity, as well as Late Spring Incorporated, DBA Gage Cannabis Company. Individuals associated with this establishment are John Hillier, Valerie Hillier, and Kenneth Frank. There are no other entities other than this applicant that have direct or indirect control over the establishment. This applicant is an RMD priority applicant. Their host community agreement was executed on March 27th, with a community outreach meeting held on March 21st. There were no objections raised to the commission. We did receive a response from the municipality on August 22nd, stating that they are in fact in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is to do the following: hold informational sessions, skill assessments, job fairs, and resume cover letter workshops at least 3 times per year in Fitchburg, Lowell, and Worcester to help individuals in those areas build the necessary skills to become more attractive employment candidates, giving a hiring preference to individuals from areas of disproportionate impact, and supporting local charities and community organizations. After 1 year of operating in the adult use market, the applicant will review the following in order to measure the success of their plan: attendance at the informational sessions and workshops, outcome of interviews generated from job fairs, overall staff that are past or present residents of disproportionate impacted areas, and the overall financial support provided to local charities and community organizations. There were no concerns raised during the background check on individuals or entities, and no disclosures of any past civil, criminal actions, or occupational license issues, as well as no disclosures of any business interest in other jurisdictions. The proposed timeline to become operational is that they are currently an RMD, a vertically integrated RMD. The applicant states that it will be operational in the adult use market within 2 months of being issued a provisional license. The proposed timeline or hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, 6 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. They supplied the required summaries, and those summaries have been determined to be substantially compliant. The diversity plan includes conducting a deliberate advertising and other forms of outreach to ensure diverse individuals are aware of employment openings, developing and implementing a screening system to mitigate bias of any employees in the interview process, providing trainings and professional development opportunities to staff at all levels, and conducting annual reviews of applicant pools, staff demographics, and changes in employment status, whether it be promotions or raises, to ensure that its goal of a diverse and unbiased workforce is in fact achieved. This is a production license. There was no summary of plans to cultivate issued or supplied to the commission, which will be inspected and gathered during the inspection process. The commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions: that their final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations. Their final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with the requirements listed in our regulations. Their final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that their facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to commission investigators, agents, and employees upon request. The provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, its suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of their responses to the required criteria. This applicant has demonstrated their compliance, and we therefore recommend a provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Then can I have a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation for Central Ave Compassionate Care Incorporated, MCN 281505?
So moved.
I'm sorry, was that Commissioner Flanagan? Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Your vote, Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved staff recommendation for Central Avenue Compassionate Care Incorporated, number MCN 281505. Thank you. Last is also Central Ave Compassionate Care Incorporated, number MPN 281399, product manufacturer. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is also Central Ave Compassionate Care. Proposed address is 31 Central Avenue in Air. The license being sought is that of a product manufacturer. They previously just secured their cultivation provisional license. As previously indicated, Mr. Hillier is the owner of this entity, as well as Late Spring Incorporated, DBA Gage Cannabis. They've also applied for their adult use license. The same individuals are identified in this application. There are no other entities identified that having direct or indirect control over the establishment. This is also an RMV priority applicant. The host community agreement was executed on March 27th. Community outreach meeting on March 21st. We received a response from the municipality on August 22nd. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is the same as previously indicated. There were no concerns raised during the background check of individuals or entities associated with the application, as well as no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions or occupational license issues. Their proposed timeline is that they're currently operating as an RMD at this location, and the applicant states will be operational in the adult use market within 2 months of being issued a provisional license. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, 6 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. They've submitted the required summaries. Those summaries have been determined to be substantially compliant. Their summary of the diversity plan is the same as previously indicated, and as indicated previously, there was no summary provided for products to be produced, which will be gathered and ascertained upon inspection. The Commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions: that their final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations. Their final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with our regulations. Their final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that their facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. That the applicant will cooperate with and provide information to the Commission staff. That the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, its suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. As of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance. We therefore recommend a provisional license with previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? And can I have a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation for Central Avenue Compassionate Care Incorporated, MPN 281399?
So moved.
Have a second, please? I'll let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made a motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Your vote, Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved staff recommendation for Central Ave Compassionate Care Incorporated, number MPN 281399. Thank you. I think I'm going to do this every time we do provisional license reviews. I just want to, again, express my thanks to the staff, particularly the enforcement and investigation staff for the thorough and hard work on all of these, and for processing as many as they have in a short period of time. So thank you very much to the entire staff involved in this. Anything else, Mr. Executive Director? Next meeting is 2 weeks from today, October 4th, 2018. Please note that the location and the time are TBD. We are once again, begging people. By the way, thank you to the Mass Health Policy Commission for allowing us to use their facilities today. But we'll find a location, obviously, publish it at the time. I just also want to put people on alert that it is likely, but not certain, that we'll do it earlier in the day. So please pay attention to the posting of the next meeting. But it will be on October 4th, 2 weeks from today. There being no further business before the commission, I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
I think we do have to unfortunately do a voice vote quickly. Commissioner Doyle?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Bye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Tuttle?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned as of 2:23 p.m. on the 20th of September. Thank you very much.